I think the content needs to be like well thought out and not promotional. If you can find the right recipe for delivering content that sticks, then you'll really start to capture your audience, and then people will start to expect more marketing from you and then ask for more.
I'm Jonathan Gandalf, and welcome to the Content Cocktail Hour, powered by The Juice. Our mission is to squeeze out the deepest secrets of B2B marketing professionals to help you push your brand to the forefront of the industry. Let's raise the glass. Welcome back to the Content Cocktail Hour. I'm your host, Jonathan Gandalf, founder and CEO of The Juice. We are thrilled to be joined today by Kristi Gamboni, Senior Integrated Marketing Manager at TrustRadius. I am fascinated by a lot of what their team is working on. Excited to dig into some of that today. But before we do that, Kristi, why don't, in your own words, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and your path to TrustRadius.
Sure. So I'm based out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. I started in B2C and then ventured into B2G a little bit before making my way to B2B, which has, believe it or not, given me a unique approach to B2B. I had to learn a lot of acronyms, but I found over time that there's a lot of similarities in the way that we go to market, whether it's B2C or B2B. It's just we call it different things. But I've really enjoyed being on the B2B side and working for TrustRadius, and I've learned a ton. So we do sell to the enterprise. We have a lot of enterprise customers. And with that, I had dived into the deep end in terms of learning like SaaS and vernacular and the way things work. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I've done actually some jumping. I started in B2B, went B2C, and I'm back in B2B. Maybe we'll dig into that a little bit because I think there's interesting learnings that are applicable and not applicable to both sides of that coin. So thank you for joining us today. We do always ask all of our guests, it's a Content Cocktail Hour, what's a beverage you're enjoying nowadays?
Well, I would have said tequila. And keep in mind, I have 3 kids, so I have to be very selective about my drink choice because I can't have much of it. But I would have said tequila, but over the weekend, I had my first martini, like dirty martini. Loved it.
Love that.
I love the brine, like it gives you one of these back here. So I really liked it.
I wish I could join. I'm more the tequila side than the martini side. My wife is Greek, loves olives, loves martinis. That's her drink of choice. And it always feels like one of those things I should enjoy, and I never do. And I do see a Jets sign in the background. So we're recording a day after Jets loss. So I can understand if you're shaking off some of those cobwebs today, or maybe some tequila from last night.
I'm just happy that Aaron Rodgers is still in one piece.
There you go. That's a victory in and of itself. Well, cool. Kristi, so TrustRadius is a little bit unique for those that do or don't know software reviews. And maybe that not your words, I'll use those words in my kind of interpretation, but it's a really interesting opportunity. You sit on a lot of like user generated content, or at least software reviews. It's a marketplace, right? So you're getting people reviewing content, you're getting brands participating and driving reviews. Maybe just at a high level, like that, there's a little bit more complexity there than a typical like B2B SaaS point solution. But what does that mean for your kind of content program? Like, just maybe walk us through how TrustRadius thinks about and acts on content marketing.
Yeah, so we are kind of dual customer base. We have our buyers that come to TrustRadius to research and review software products. And then we have our vendor base who have enhanced their premium product profiles and leverage the intent data or visibility of buyers researching them and their competitors. So we sort of have like almost like this like dual fan base that we have to appeal to. And so content creation can be kind of tricky in that sense. But what we're finding is that our disconnect report, for example, that we release every year, it's in its 11th year. When we discuss buyer trends, like purchasing trends and buyer behaviors, that's applicable to everyone. Everyone's interested in that and how that works, and it kind of applies across the board. So we get a lot of marketing out of our disconnect report each year. We also highlight marketing tactics, so the ways that marketers appeal to buyers and the disconnect between those preferences and what buyers would prefer to consume. That data is pretty universal, and buyers find that really interesting as well. But in terms of like informing our content marketing from a lot of the user sort of generated content that we get and stuff like that, we really try to lead by example and like drink our own champagne and really hone in on the customer references that we get and the customer testimonials that we get. We harvest a lot of them, and we really try to get as many legs out of each customer story that we get. You'll notice on our social media pages, we do something called Shout Out Sundays. So every Sunday we're shouting out a company for just doing a great job at driving reviews, and we'll highlight one of their reviews. We also do a new segment called Reviews After Dark, where we highlight customers that are doing a great job driving authentic reviews. And so we try to do as much as we can to really elevate customer voice and let the customer voice do the talking for us, which is something that we suggest companies do. So we really try to lead by example with that sort of stuff.
That's so good. There's just so much in there I want to kind of react to, but I love the idea of finding the overlap between what's interesting to your visitors doing the reviews as well as your vendors. That's actually something we also struggle with at the Juice, because we're attracting users to consume content and vendors to promote content on our platform. And you have to be, where you find that overlap, it's gold, right? But sometimes even that overlap, it could be confusing to one side or the other. So it's really cool you guys are leaning into what you do and your platform for highlighting your own content, creating your own content. That's a really cool use case. I know you guys are also leaning into events right now, which is something we hear a lot from marketers, both virtual, in person. That seems to be an area where marketers are still investing, if not money, a lot of their own time and energy. How are you all thinking about events at TrustRadius?
Yeah, so events don't have to be expensive. I think we kind of burst that bubble with COVID, with conferences, sponsorships, packages, things like that. You can still attend an event and make a huge impact and have great conversations and meet shake hands with the right people and get in front of the right people without spending $20,000+ on a sponsorship. And so in terms of in-person physical events, we've really capitalized on that by coordinating adjacent CMO dinners where we invite both prospects and customers. We tend to focus on the C-suite because they are the influence to the decision maker if they're not the decision maker themselves. And so at those types of events, you'll tend to find more of the senior audience. And the evening hours are a great time. Everybody's, they're there to attend the conference or summit, and they have those evening hours open. So we really try to capitalize on those with dinners, nice dinners, sometimes happy hours, things like that. You can also partner with other companies to put these sorts of events together to split the cost. And that's something that we do a lot of the time. And then you don't always have to be an exhibitor. You can walk the floor. You can prospect into regional-based contacts or prospects and set up meetings beforehand. You can run incentives to book a meeting leading up to or beforehand. There's just lots of ways you can get creative. And, it doesn't have to be super expensive or exhausting or involve a lot of work from your field team. It can be a very lean and efficient way to get in front of people at a time where people are traveling more and things are opening up. People are going to more events and stuff like that. You can be more strategic and attend more by being a little bit more lean. So that is something that we tend to do at TrustRadius. And then in terms of virtual events are really sort of, for us, kind of like the secret sauce. We've really figured out a way to capitalize on virtual events and create interest through engaging content and engaging speakers. I think that really is sort of the key to success, is having valued thought leadership that is trending in the marketplace right now, but also the content needs to be rich. And so a lot of pre-planning and thought can go into making events successful. You really don't want them to feel promotional in nature. People know when they're being, what is it called? Pitch slapped or whatever. People know when they're being sold to. They're very smart. And so you can't really let on any sort of inkling of that happening, because you have to realize that if you serve a purpose for the people attending your virtual event, if you educate them on something, if you teach them something new, you're getting that brand awareness regardless. You don't really need to have a strong call to action associated with that. More than anything, you're gaining their trust, and they're going to consider you in the future, or hey, they'll continue to follow your page and not unfollow you. So that's great. But yeah, virtual events are a great way, a very cost-effective way to get in front of the masses. And partnering with influencers or thought leaders and having rich content is the best way to do that.
I love that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're not tricking a sales and marketing audience when you are pitch slapping them in an event, which I know is your audience, our audience as well. We know, right? So I think providing value and trusting the long game is the way to go there. And also totally agree on events. You can do them big and expensive, and I think there's a time and place for that, but you can also do them extremely lean and be very effective as well. I'm going to Inbound next week. We'll release this episode after Inbound, so I guess I can't get in trouble for it, but I'm not buying a ticket to the event. I'm going to go post up in the hotel lobby across from the convention center, and I'll see everybody I need to see and meet some new people as well. It's the same thing we did last year. And I think just getting out there and getting in market is just as important as sometimes the actual like sponsorship strategy. So I love that perspective. I'm curious, you mentioned events as kind of your secret sauce, and you talked about, driving results with events, but especially for TrustRadius, where you've got the two audiences that we referenced earlier, how are you measuring success of events and content in general? Is it more reviews? Is it more business? Is it some combination of both or something entirely different? What does good content kind of look like for you and your team?
Yeah, so we do create sort of like dual topics. So to our buyer base and our vendor base, we do have like different topics when it comes to virtual events that we have to appeal to them. So like for buyers, for example, we have like our buyer tell-all where we'll focus in on categories of products. Like we did one on like finance, we did one on HR, we're doing one on like the demand gen persona, like MarTech and stuff like that. So, and then we'll invite, based off of job titles, we'll invite people from our buyer database to come and join those events. And really, there's no like KPIs or metrics. That really is just a brand awareness play to position ourselves as thought leaders in the space and to highlight some of the vendors on our site, and then to bring in authoritative speakers on the subject. So it really, in terms of like performance, for us, a lot of it has to do with like the pre-reg numbers. They're in the hundreds. So each one of these that we do, we're getting great turnout. We're not spending $1 on getting those people to those events. People just really like grasp onto the content and the speakers. So that's key. And then the cool thing with like live events on LinkedIn, which is something that we prefer to do, is that people can register and watch the video for weeks and months to come after the fact. So your content doesn't really go, out into the ether and become stale. Depending on your engagement with the event after the fact or how you leverage that video after the fact, you'll continue to see people register for that event weeks and months after. I know we had an event, a tell-all a couple months ago, and it gained like 100 registrants after the fact when we went back 6 months later and looked at it. And so those registrants can be downloaded, and you can do engagement with the people that attended. Or you can also, activate your field team to pay attention to like who attended, who was in the audience. Are there any customers in the audience? Anybody we want to reach out to, send them the full recording if they don't have it. They're also just a great like soft touch for your customer contacts. You're not always in touch with your customer, and then you don't want to be the company that only reaches out when it's time to renew or something like that. And so thought leadership is a great way to stay in touch and just keep a pulse on their engagement with you. And so we do encourage like our field team to touch base on those events, and that creates sort of this multi-threaded alignment across the organization, because you have like the promotion leading up to, you have the day of, and then you have the weeks and months after where you can really like capitalize on that content. And it can also be turned into a landing page, social snippets, regurgitated back out 1,000 different ways. Every thought, leadership webinar or a virtual event, I guarantee you has at least 25 snippets from there that could be, redispersed or used out at a later date that tend to be evergreen. So they're just a great way to like multi-thread marketing campaigns in a cost-effective but lean but executable and effective way.
I love throughout this conversation, we've like the disconnect report and then these events, and they're not just like one-time initiatives. It sounds like you are, I always use the word atomizing, but creating sub-content from those pieces. And that just feels so efficient, especially in today's world. And then it sounds like you're collaborating with customer team, sales team, your field team, very collaborative all across the board. So kudos to you all. It's certainly easier said than done, and you all seem to be actually executing on it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with you have to prove that it works and like get that buy-in. And so once you do it a few times, it's a much easier conversation with your field team or with your sales team to say like, this is why we should do this. Like the power of social media is only as effective as the reporting. So you have to like communicate frequent and often, like what's working, what's not, be very transparent. Like our social media strategy for 2024, we shared out with the entire organization. We have an employee advocacy tool that we use called GaggleAmp to help activate employees to share. And I think we have like 60 employees that are active, like just completely sharing out stuff all the time. We do internal contests to help with engagement and stuff like that. And so it really is about like getting buy-in from the organization that social media is a powerful tool. And then from there, it's a much easier sell to get them to activate on the content within.
That's so good. Kudos to you for building that trust and kind of championing all of that internally. I'm gonna pick on one project specifically because I'm curious on the buy-in and kind of process you went through for this. Reviews After Dark. I was just checking this out when I saw we were going to be recording together, and I love like it's such a creative spin on a very like traditional B2B tactic. Tell us about Reviews After Dark and kind of the process you went through to get this maybe non-traditional idea or creativity kind of through the team and executed on at such a high level.
Yeah, so this was a passion project of mine. We were doing something called Sunday Shoutouts, and because Sunday was not a peak time, but I know people are on their phones on the weekend on LinkedIn. So I was like, we have to capitalize on this weekend time frame on a consistent basis, and so that's why we started these like Sunday Shoutouts where we highlighted customers and prospects like doing a great job driving reviews. Well, there was an ask within the organization to do something for customers, like specifically for customers, something a little bit more elevated. And to me, I was like, it can't just be a post. It can't be a podcast. It can't be this. I was trying to figure out like what it should be. And so that's where we really landed on the Reviews After Dark, because again, I wanted to capitalize on the time frame that people aren't seeming to use, which 8:00 at night on a weekday, people are on their phone. People are scrolling LinkedIn, whether they like to admit it, they're not posting, but they are reacting and they are engaging on content. And so I felt like this was like a sweet spot, an experiment we should try. And so in terms of like getting buy-in, I basically went to the field team and the leadership team and said, I have this crazy idea. I've run it by a few people. I ran it by somebody at Zoom Info. I ran it by somebody at Blue Ocean. I ran it by somebody at LinkedIn. I ran it by all these people. I ran it by an agency that creates podcasts. And I was just like, what do you think of this idea? It's a departure from our normal brand voice and tone. It's much sillier, but because it's a segment and not an extension of our brand, I can divorce myself from it if it goes west, like it would be really easy just to stop it all together and no one would notice. So that's why we branded it completely separately from TrustRadius. It doesn't even have like the same brand colors. And we have just like two people from TrustRadius that have like, a dynamic personality that can hold a conversation, just come on at night and just really expand on what these customers are doing and how they're doing a great job. But what we kind of realized in the process is that we get so like, in terms of like fraudulent or like biased reviews or like clearly incentivized reviews, we get so much garbage that we actually like cut and like that never sees the light of day. Like last year we rejected like 60% of our reviews and nobody really knows that. Other traditional review sites will have like thousands and thousands of reviews, but then you'll clearly find some that are just, why is this on here? So what we did was like, let's poke fun at the ones that we've rejected. And so that's what we aim to do with each episode is we start off by like, here's some of the review. Can you believe that we've gotten these reviews for like enterprise SaaS companies claiming to be this person or this person? And we just kind of like poke fun at them. We actually have an episode airing tonight that I'm really excited about. It's all about people who have claimed to be celebrities on our site. So people who've left reviews as Jake Gyllenhaal or, Elon Musk. Like there's all these people that have like literally taken this extreme measure to leave fake reviews where they've created fake LinkedIn profiles, fake email addresses, and like have gone in and they're not always like negative or overly positive reviews. They're just completely fake. And so tonight we're going to highlight some of those and then give a big kudos to one of our customer accounts for doing a great job and kind of show the stark difference between what a fake review looks like versus a non-cherry picked quality and, review with integrity. So that is the aim of the episode, is to really highlight people who are doing a great job.
You mean to tell me Jake Gyllenhaal is not in the market for enterprise SaaS technology? That's shocking to me.
No, and he also doesn't work at Tesla, and he also doesn't have the last name Smith. So you'll see if you watch the episode tonight. There's a lot of interesting people out there, and it's hard to say, what's AI or robots or whatever, but if you're not manually vetting these things like TrustRadius does, they're going to slip through the cracks, which they tend to do, which is a lot of buzz right now with like the FTC guidelines and like stuff like that. But we do a lot. We go to extreme measures to sift that stuff out. So having an opportunity to make fun of it and highlight it is a lot of fun for both like the company and like our customers.
That's awesome. Well, it is a lot of fun. I will certainly champion the creativity and the fun you all are having there. I'm curious, do you credit that idea to like your kind of transition from B2C to B2B? Like, do you ever like lift your kind of head up, and is that what kind of empowers you to find these creative and silly and fun ideas? Like, what's been the biggest kind of learning or aha moment you've had kind of in that experience of shifting from B2C to B2G to B2B? Like, is that actually an advantage where I think a lot of people would say like, oh, you don't have as much B2B experience? It's like, well, actually I've got a fresh perspective.
Right. Yes. Like when I first started TrustRadius, I felt a little bit of that. What's this acronym mean? Like, you should know what that means. But I'm like, but it also means this in like another marketing world that you're just not privy to. You know what I mean? Like, you just created your own phrase for the same thing we've been talking about for years, you know? Like, I did have like a little bit of that, but at the same time, like I did have sort of like this untethered approach to marketing that seems to be working in a lot of different ways. It almost is kind of looking at things through like a B2C lens, but also like B2G taught me a lot too, because there's no one harder to sell to than the government. No one. And they're evasive, they're hard to find, and you have a short time frame to get their attention, and they want to be informed, they want to be educated. And so a lot of my background has kind of like led up to this point where I kind of like have a feeling for what works without going like overboard. A good example is something we did recently with our field team. We did an incentivized demo, and we leveraged I picked something that's trending right now. Forget Stanley, forget the big dumb cup or whatever. I was like, I can't like lean into that right now, but we did like lean into Yeti. So we did like Yeti for leads that convert, book a demo with us, and we'll send you like a branded Yeti or whatever. And you'd be surprised how many people just like want a Yeti, but also with the value of a Yeti, you know, a $50 equivalent or whatever, the value of that is worth 30 minutes of their time. And so, and I do think there's something to be said for like the psychology behind tangibles versus intangibles. Like a gift card is not as tangible as like an item being sent to your house. It doesn't have that like exchange, like that sort of like psychological impact of like, I just got
like a package,
something.
you get to unwrap a package or something. Yeah.
Right. And so that seems to work for us too. And again, that kind of goes back to B2C world, you know, like where you try to get crafty with gift with purchase and stuff like that. It kind of goes back to that a little bit. So yeah. I would definitely say it's influenced it.
It's I was in B2B in 2014. I went B2C 2018-ish, came back B2B. And I remember that window of B2B that I missed was like the rise of account-based marketing and ABM, right? And I remember the team I joined in 2018, everybody was talking about ABM. And I was like, what the hell does ABM mean? Like, I don't know. And so I sat down with somebody that I had learned to trust pretty quickly on the team. I was like, hey, like, what's ABM? Like, what are we talking about here? She's like, it's account-based marketing. We send packages to people that we're targeting, and we work with the sales team to follow up. And I was there, I like looked her in the face, and I was like, isn't that just like marketing? Like, what are we, like, what we've like overcomplicated our jobs into like making it sound like something super, I don't know, super sophisticated. And I'm all for ABM, but I think it works when done really well. And you know, like that strategy, I was just like, wait, I thought I had missed this big like reveal, and it was actually like, it was just like marketing. And I was like, oh, okay, I feel a little bit better now.
That I had that same sort of like epiphany when I met my first like demand gen person. Like I was like, well, how is your role different from mine? And then they explained it, and I was like, isn't that just marketing?
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, I don't understand. That's your whole job? That's all you have to focus on? And like it would kind of explain to me like all that it entails, and it's much more like metrics driven. There's lots of like performance and reporting and optimization and like KPI score, like a scoring, or all these things that go into it. But yeah, I mean, like when you zoom out, like the 30,000 foot view of marketing, some of the stuff does seem kind of silly, especially if you've come from like another industry and you're like, you're overcomplicating it. It doesn't need to be that complicated. Attribution's another example of that. Like marketers like complicate the crap out of attribution, and for what? You know, like I do agree that I think it's kind of funny. And I think that being able, if you can keep that fresh lens, that fresh perspective of like, don't overthink it, you know, like you can experiment and trial and error and learn quicker and optimize faster and get buy-in on things that work versus don't work when you can like fearlessly experiment. Like that's sort of like my motto, is just fearlessly experiment and learn from my mistakes and move on. Like don't get hung up in all this like jargon and what other people are doing, because guess what? B2B is boring. Everyone's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So don't be like everyone else,
Exactly. And that leads you to reviews after dark, which is just awesome. I love that fearlessly experiment. I might steal that one. Totally. Marketers, we get in our own way far too often.
We do.
So, this is all such a great segue into the last question we always like to ask all of our guests. You look almost giddy to answer this question. So I'll tee it up here. What is one unpopular opinion you have as it pertains to B2B marketing?
I don't know if it's unpopular as much as it is just, maybe it's common sense, but I do. And, back to overcomplicating marketing. When I first kind of switched gears, like industries-wise, I was astounded with how much like SaaS companies, B2B marketers are willing to spend on things that should not cost that much. And so I guess my sort of like hot take is B2B marketing can be effective and doesn't have to be astronomically expensive. It doesn't go back to the whole like do more with less. I'm not trying to enforce that or influence that, but there are ways to sort of like be lean, be effective, make a big impact without breaking the bank. And there's a lot of funding that gets thrown around with, startups and like new ideas, new innovations and things like that, where it's almost become like expected that you have to like have money to be effective we did in our disconnect report, we talk a lot about the year of the brand crisis and that established leading brands who have been prioritizing brand all this time, who never took a step away from brand awareness, are leading at the forefront in terms of like buyers creating their short lists and things like that. But what we're not saying like, oh, you need to divest away from demand gen into brand awareness. What we're saying is brand should be incorporated at every step of the buying journey. And there's cost-effective ways to do that. You don't need to go out and spend like $10,000 on a co-promoted webinar with a big brand just so you have like guaranteed like butts and seats or whatever. Like you can go out and like what we do, we just use like LinkedIn virtual events. And you can go out and if you have a good idea, if you have speakers, like you can go out and set up an event and get the same registrant list, same head count, maybe with some like targeted advertising promote to like a select audience, but it doesn't have to be like this cumbersome, like overly expensive thing. It can be just strategic and effective, and it can go a really long way. Once you multi-thread that in alignment with your marketing and sales teams, it can go a really, really long way. You can take one piece of content, get 25 social snippets. You can repurpose it over the course of 6 months before the content becomes stale. You can send it out in email. You can put it in your signature. You can have your AEs and your AMs send it as a soft touch. You can do all sorts of things. You can put it as on a landing page on your website and index the script from that series. And, that's, SEO right there, if depending on what you talk about. And so there's just so many things you can do with like virtual events and even in-person events. Marketing doesn't have to be astronomically expensive, and you don't need to be a big dog to like participate and play. Like you can compete with, big companies, and you'll even surprise people when they find out how big your marketing team is. Like you want to be the company where people are shocked at how large your marketing team is. And so you just have to be more strategic and savvy.
Yeah, I always call that punching up in weight class, right?
Yeah.
Like you just feel so much bigger than you are. And I think it says a lot that you, TrustRadius, who markets to enterprise software brands and executive level of those enterprise brands, is, advocating for the fact that it doesn't need to be that expensive. It just needs to be creative. It needs to be coordinated with the team. I think that's good inspiration for everybody listening and watching this episode. So I love that.
I was just going to add to that. I think the content needs to be like well thought out and not promotional. If you can find the right recipe for delivering content that sticks, then you'll really start to capture your audience. And then people will start to expect more marketing from you and then ask for more. And so that was just something I wanted to add.
Fearlessly experiment, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Kristi, if people want to learn more from you or learn more about TrustRadius, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn is where we are.
Love that. Well, everybody go check out TrustRadius. Look at the content they're producing. It does stand out in a very noisy space here in the B2B MarTech, sales tech, go-to-market tech world. Big fan of what they're doing over there. Kristi, thank you so much for joining us today. To all of our watchers and listeners, thanks for joining a fresh episode. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Content Cocktail Hour powered by The Juice. If you want to see more episodes or more resources curated for your role, join us on app.thejuicehq.com.
See you next time. Same place. Cheers.